One of the most frustrating things in the world is when woke Hollywood elites attempt to lecture everybody on how they should think and why they should think that way. And if you don't agree, well, it's just because you're racist. Another frustrating thing is when those very same people pretend like they care or pretend like they're fans of something, when in reality, they have no idea what they're talking about, but they're trying to do so in order to lecture said group of individuals on how they should think. Well, Whoopi Goldberg and the rest of the hags on The View did exactly that regarding the backlash surrounding Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, and also some of the criticism of House of the Dragon. Star Trek Picard actress Whoopi Goldberg, the latest celebrity to imply critics of House of the Dragon and Rings of Power are racist. Now, isn't it interesting that we're hearing that all the backlash for Rings of Power is just from these people who are racist? That's why they don't like race swapping. It has nothing to do with it going contrary to the original material, has nothing to do with it going against what Tolkien and what George R. R. Martin, to be fair, wrote. But somehow there's a much different reaction for Rings of Power, 39% audience score, than there has been for House of the Dragon, which by most people is generally being enjoyed pretty well. That doesn't mean there's not criticism for going against the source material, but the difference is the show itself is actually good, as opposed to Rings of Power, which not only race swap people, but also the rest of the series is just garbage. But listen to what Whoopi Goldberg and these woke hags on The View had to say about this. Unable to keep her insufferably woke opinions to herself, Whoopi Goldberg is making headlines after labeling critics of House of the Dragon and Lord of the Rings as racist for expressing legitimate concerns regarding their treatment of the respective source materials. And we might as well just listen to her. I apologize, you are going to have to hear Whoopi Goldberg, unfortunately, for this, but we have to let her speak with her own words. And for how many followers does this have? It has 1 million followers. They tweeted this out a couple days ago, gets 6,000 views, 200 likes. Pathetic. But again, no one actually cares about these women. Here we go.
I want to start by saying these are not real, okay? The new Lord of the Rings series, The Rings of Power, and Game of Thrones prequel, House of the Dragon, are both massive hits, but they don't exist in the real world, okay? There are no dragons, there are no hobbits, you know that.
Well, let's just stop this stupid bitch right here. You are correct. It's not in the real world. It's in a fantasy world that's been cultivated by different people. Both these fantasy stories exist in different worlds, have different rules, have different laws, have different histories, all these things, because that's how fantasy is created. But somehow, even though they don't exist in the real world, what people like Whoopi Goldberg and woke activists, all the people that are making this shit in Hollywood, what they're trying to do is make these stories the real world. So it's funny that you start with that caveat, because I agree, it's not the real world. It doesn't need to represent all real world things. But yet somehow that's been the push from people like Whoopi Goldberg. And just for the record, I mean woke people.
And there are critics who are saying they were too woke by adding diverse characters. Are you telling me black people can't be fake people too? Yeah. Is that what you're telling me? You can be a dragon. Well,
let's just be clear here, because these people are very stupid. We have to lay it out for them. The problem is not that there's people of color in Middle Earth, because there has been. There's actually, if you wanted to tell that story, you could. It's not the elves and it's not the dwarves, but there are people of color, there are men of color that you would be able to use for this, but you didn't want to for Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. And we're going to talk about Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon as well. Now, that is a legitimate race swap like we've talked about before. I do think it causes a problem with things that will be coming in this story. And that is a definite criticism of mine, but the show in and of itself, so far for me, I'm really enjoying it. Can't say the same thing about Rings of Power.
I don't know if there's like a Hobbit, club. I don't know if they're going to be protests, but people, what is wrong with y'all?
Well, their argument is that it betrays the source material.
Like they haven't read the source material.
Of course they haven't. Like J.K. Tolkien and stuff like that.
Wait, what? They haven't read the source material, says Whoopi Goldberg. Whoopi Goldberg, who can barely read through this fucking script, who clearly has no idea what she's fucking talking about, says they haven't read the source material. In the same breath, her co-host, Sunny Hostin, says J.K. Tolkien. Who the fuck is that? You might as well be using J.K. Tolkien's source material. And of course, Whoopi doesn't correct her because she doesn't know either. These women are insufferable. These women are stupid as fuck. These women are hags, yet they are still out here pretending that they should be the arbiters of how everyone else should be reacting to these series that they're not even fans of.
Yeah, but I'm a fantasy.
Hamilton then. The show,
Well,
play
yes,
Hamilton.
but I'm a fantasy nerd, and Whoopi and I are sci-fi and fantasy.
Bro, I'm a fantasy nerd. I'm a fantasy nerd, but I don't know who J.R.R. Tolkien is. I'm a fantasy nerd, but I said J.K. Tolkien, and not a single one of these other nerds on the panel with me said anything or laughed or anything. You just let it go. Weird, huh?
Fantasy nerd, so I love it so much, and I especially love Mr. Toussaint, who plays the very sexy black man,
Yes,
the rich
do you have
black
the
man with
picture
the dreads.
of the man
You don't know his name because you haven't watched the show, Corliss Valerian, that's fine.
who is looking much like me?
I love him.
Literally refer to him as the black man because you care so much about fantasy and sci-fi that you can't remember a character's name.
I think
Yes,
he's gonna
sorry.
He looks like you when you had the white dress.
Yes. Okay, Mr. Toussaint.
I love Mr. Toussaint. I would like him to be a guest on the show. But that being said, what I think is fascinating is like dragons are okay, fire-breathing dragons, and people with white hair that are born like that when they're little and violet eyes. But the black people in it is just a bridge too far for these.
That's what he said.
Once again, these people are trying to gaslight everyone. And also, these aren't even her words. She's not even smart enough to come up with those words herself. She had to steal it from Steve Toussaint, because that's what he said. They're happy with a dragon, white hair, and violet-colored eyes, but a rich black guy is beyond the pale. Now, one of the dumbest things we've heard from Steve Toussaint when it comes to his show, House of the Dragon, because we've seen rich black men in Game of Thrones before, it didn't matter, because it wasn't a character that was specifically described as not that color. What people are talking about is taking the lore and taking what happened in these things and changing it for identity politics purposes. Yes, people have no problem with dragons in a world where dragons have been established. Take something like Harry Potter, that is set in a fantasy land. People have no problem believing in magic, believing in wands, believing in all these different things. But if you threw a lightsaber into Harry Potter, people would be like, well, hold on, that's not how, this doesn't make any sense if you put it in this world. That's why he's saying people will believe these things, but not that a black man can be in it. Of course black people can be in Game of Thrones. We've seen black people in Game of Thrones, but you're taking a character and a family that's specifically described as not that skin color and changing it that way for identity politics. Definitively, that is what's happening.
Wait,
It's just
he
a
said
bridge
that
too
in a
far.
quote. He said they're happy with the dragon flying, they're happy with white hair and violet-colored eyes, but a rich black guy?
It's just too much.
That was
It's just
where
a
they
bridge
lost
too
it.
far.
It's just
Well,
too
y'all are
racist.
gonna lose your minds when you see the new Ariel.
Yeah.
Look at how happy she is. This is what it's actually about. Look at how happy Whoopi Goldberg is that they race swapped another white character in Ariel for Disney. Of course, that trailer's getting ratioed, but look at how gleeful this bitch is that the black people are taking another scalp from white people. That's really what this is all about. That's why she's so gleeful. That's why she's so excited about this.
Yes.
Because and I don't want to upset any mermaids who are watching the show.
Yes.
You know, because I know there are many communities of mermaids of various colors. And when I say of various colors, I'm not playing. There are violet mermaids, there are pink mermaids, there are black mermaids, there are Latina mermaids, there are mermaids of...
Then why didn't you, here's the question, let's just play along with her fantasy here. Like, if that's the case, right, and of course, you can make up whatever story you want. You probably just shouldn't call it The Little Mermaid. You probably just shouldn't call her Ariel, right? You can tell a story of another black mermaid if you want. I guarantee you, there's probably some awesome stories from Africa, from African countries, some myths, some fairy tales, whatever, that involve very similar stories to mermaids and things like that. Why don't you tell that story? Why don't you take an original black story? But of course, not gonna do that, are you?
Every ilk. And you know why there can be? Because it's the world that we would like to see better.
Yeah.
We would like to see as
Fantasy.
many people represented
Fantasy.
in fantasy as exists. So all of y'all who have problems because there are black hobbits, get a job.
Yeah.
Get a job. Get a job because you're upset with black hobbits. It must just be the unemployed people that have a problem with breaking Tolkien's lore, with this garbage that they're giving us from Rings of Power. That must be the case. I don't think we want to get into demographics associated with the declaration that Whoopi Goldberg just made, but that's what they do, right? They have no actual arguments. They don't know what they're talking about when it comes to Tolkien. They're just saying it's okay to change everything because we want to see it that way.
Get a job.
Just
Go
fancy.
find yourself because you are focused on the wrong stuff.
And watch Mr. Toussaint, because he's really cute.
Well, this is what I don't understand. Imagine getting so offended by this to take the time to write like 250 words of this is not original source material for J.R.R. Tolkien.
Yeah.
Like, how does this offend you? You just need a hobby.
It's just racist.
Well,
That's holy shit. You need a hobby. This is people's hobbies. What don't you fucking women understand about that? This is people's hobbies. This story, this lore, this canon, this world, getting into this and loving this shit, that is some people's hobbies. And now you're saying, well, why are you so upset about that? Get a hobby. This is their hobby. And people like you, people like these women, people like this are out there to destroy their hobbies. And you expect them to just sit there. And of course, Joy Behar, this pig, comes in and says they're racist.
Yeah.
Like, how does this offend you? You just need a hobby.
It's just racist. Let's call it what it is.
Let's call it what it is.
But it's bad.
And then Whoopi says, yes, let's call it what it is. It's racist. That's what they think. If you have a problem with people invading your hobbies, if you have a problem with people destroying this stuff, then you're just racist. Get a job and get another hobby, according to these women. Listen, I operated nuclear reactors for the United States Navy for 11 years. That was my job. And even when that was my job, I still would have talked about people trying to destroy our hobbies. In fact, I did speak out about that to anybody who would listen to me. Now, this is my job. My job is to talk about my hobbies, much in the same way Whoopi Goldberg is out there talking on The View every day about her opinions on whatever. That's also what I'm doing. So congrats, Whoopi. We have the exact same job now, but I will never hesitate to do my job and call out dumb bitches like you, the rest of the woke Hollywood elites, and any of these people that want to destroy all these hobbies, who want to destroy all these things that came before in the name of identity politics. And I will never hesitate to tell you to go fuck yourself. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Smash a like button, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications, share this video out there, and I'll talk to you later.
Thanks for watching, everyone, and a huge shout out to my patrons. I appreciate you guys so much. Want to follow me on Twitter or Instagram? Check out the description below. You'll find links to my P.O. box and my Patreon as well. And I'll talk to you guys later.